everyone. Welcome to the last and final week of school. Let's go ahead and jump right in here. Click there. All right. I decided to do my presentation on the G1000 NXI. In case you don't know, the G1000 NXI is the G1000 version that Garmin made for the King Air. Let's see here real quick. The biggest thing, let me move this actually. One of the biggest things that you'll notice with the difference is the picture above is actually the avionics bay before the upgrade, and the picture below is the avionics bay after the upgrade. You can shed as much as I think it was 380 pounds of potential load, fuel. There's so many things you can do with the additional weight, as well as with this upgrade and that space, you have less downtime for when you have something that is squawked. Obviously, it is much easier for the mechanics and people working on the avionics to get in and replace something with that much space and room available. On to the next. One of the big features that is really nice to upgrading the avionics to something more modern is with the G1000 NXI, Garmin allows you to do a lot of your pre-flight planning on like an tablet or an iPad through their app, the Garmin Pilot app. So you can do all your weather, your briefing, your pre-flight, and then when you get to the actual aircraft, you would just load that flight plan and all the pre-flighting that you'd done onto the avionics, and you'd be ready to go as far as the flight. There we go. Now, this is actually a neat little feature. They have a surface watch runway monitoring and alert technology. Basically, what this is it's as you're coming in for a landing or overflying the airport, it'll let you know if you're on the wrong runway, if you're coming into a runway that is too short or too long. It'll let you know if there's traffic on the runway. It also works with the safe taxi feature that we'll see later in the presentation. Now here we have the airborne weather radar. This is an optional add-on through Garmin. There's a whole bunch of technicality that we can get into with the tilt of your antenna and how to utilize the weather radar properly. However, with the airborne weather radar, you are going to have again just more information, especially if you were doing any sort of transatlantic flying. This is something that you would want to have access to, or if you're just in an area where there's not a lot of weather reporting. And then even if you are, just having that airborne weather radar is just something additional information that would be essential to the safe operation of your aircraft. Of course, it's ADS-B in and out compliant. I think we're all pretty much familiar with the TCAS and all that. This is a neat little feature that it has. It'll calculate the speed like a TCAS. Basically, it calculates the speed and trajectory of the aircraft that you might possibly be encountering or coming into contact with, and it'll basically give you ways to avert that interception. Now this is the vertical navigation. This is again going to be for instrument approaches. You have to get down to a certain altitude for certain waypoints. Sometimes they're designated by ATC. What this will do is actually give you the multi-waypoint Barrio nav descent guidance. So it helps you get down to those altitudes at the appropriate times that you need to be there. Which actually leads to one of my favorite features of the Garmin G1000 NXI is the LPV approaches. Now LPV approaches are basically approaches for airports that do not have an ILS, or they might have an ILS but you're on a runway that doesn't have the ILS. What this does is, you can see in the screenshot right here, is it actually gives you a virtual guidance, almost like a visual reference, to come down to that runway safely using those kind of the block and the guidance. Now what's really cool here is that you can go down to 200 feet as a minimum with LPV approaches. And again, from a business aspect or even just a versatility, this is going to allow you to get into a lot of airports and runways that you wouldn't have been able to otherwise. They don't have ILS approaches, so instead of landing at a hub that has an ILS because of bad weather and having to drive the 50 miles or take your cargo or whatever it is being transported, you can now get into airports that you previously wouldn't have been able to. And there's a whole section on how Garmin does that. They typically go with the 3% descent rate to the runway. They do, when there's not a descent or approach approved, they actually do a visual scan, make sure there's not a visual scan, a system scan, make sure there aren't any obscurations or things that would affect the 3% slope, and if there are, they of course accommodate for that. Now this is also another really cool feature that I enjoy. The synthetic vision, you'll see down in the display, it's now tricolored. You have green, yellow, and red. The green's for 2,000 feet to your aircraft, yellow is for 1,000, and red is for 100. But what I really like about the synthetic vision is if you see the terrain ahead that's 3D mapped, it actually takes on the color of the tricolor display that you have. So again, as you look lower, it's kind of green, you can't really see it, but you see the yellow straight ahead, and then of course if it got red, you would want to avoid and take evasive maneuvers for that. But that the synthetic vision as well as the terrain mapping with the color is another one of my favorites of the G1000 NXI. And this is the safe taxi feature I was talking about. Basically, for any vehicles or aircraft that are going to be on the airport that are ADS-B and projecting that, this will not only let you know what other vehicles there are to avoid or maneuver around or basically be aware of the other vehicles, but it'll also, as a taxi diagram, you know exactly where you are. There's no, I mean, you could still potentially get lost, but you have much more situational awareness as to where the aircraft is in relation to other aircraft as well as on the actual airport diagram. Now, the last point is the references. I did the Garmin. There was a video of the NXI done by one of the Garmin team that was actually really beneficial. They did specifically the NXI advanced features. I also spoke with actually my brother Thomas Yagi. I did a phone interview with him because he's flown a lot with the King Air and with the Garmin G1000 NXI. And then lastly, I used the basically the owner's manual, the pilot's guide for the Garmin G1000 to kind of find a lot of these features. Sorry for the late turn-in. It took me a long time to figure out how to actually get a screenshot with my face on there while I'm giving the PowerPoint presentation. I had to use my Mac. I was trying to do it on my iPad and actually had to borrow my brother's, but it has been a wonderful semester, and I hope everybody out there flies safe and flies often. Y'all have a great summer.